Hi everyone, I'm Sue from the Aarhus Architecture School in Denmark, and I'll be speaking about my PhD research called Urban Seascaping. It's a study looking into the potentials of integrating marine life, such as seaweed, as part of coastal adaptation and rethinking urban development in coastal cities. To give you a brief overview of my presentation, first I'll address quickly some of the main problems I'm dealing with, such as the current business as usual urban development models in coastal cities that are not currently sufficiently prepared for future rise in sea level and frequent storm surges, while at the same time needing to address interrelated issues such as diminishing biodiversity, pollution of coastal waters, and the need to reduce and capture carbon. Second, I will discuss the propositions of urban seascaping as a potential approach to coastal adaptation based on a case study city of Vejle in Denmark. So urban seascaping was an initial hypothesis where I was wondering, just like we landscape with trees and flowers, what if we seascape with seaweed and mussels as an approach to re-envisioning urban development and coastal adaptation? And my interest in seaweed came from the fact that there's been much more focus and emphasis on salt marshes, wetlands, and eelgrass in Denmark, but not so much on the potentials of seaweed as a player in rethinking the current boundary and relationship between the city and the sea, human and non-humans. But if you look at the history of urban development at the waterfront and the harborfront of coastal cities, since the 19th century, many fall into patterns of developing out into the water in the form of land reclamation, replacing salt marshes, eelgrass, seaweed that used to exist in these areas. Now it presents a problem in the future as these land reclaimed, heavily developed waterfront areas that are not designed to handle more water and will be submerged due to the rising sea level and increasing frequency and strength of storm surges. And the meeting place between the city and the sea is usually a hard concrete edge to the current water level, which has been constructed in place of the marine life form that used to exist there and depend on the shallow waters to have access to sunlight. Moreover, the delineation and division between what is city and what is sea is very marked and dualistic, with limited space for better access, engagement, and tactility for humans and with the non-human world, and limited space for marine life to grow. While many cities are resorting to seawalls, gates, and pumps, there are ways to include the marine life forms as part of coastal adaptation in the future, so we don't just live by the sea, but with the sea. And the need to revive and restore this marine nature that coastal cities have removed is particularly important because they have numerous benefits to both humans and non-humans. For instance, seaweed, unlike other coastal organisms, can be edible. It's a healthy, sustainable food source that does not require fertilizer, pesticide, or any land to grow. It also produces oxygen, captures carbon. It's able to be a sustainable form of fuel and feed for animals. Plus, it hosts one of the most diverse biodiversity in the world and filters the water of pollutants. But where it plays a role in coastal adaptation is that it can help reduce the strength of waves from storm surges and thus minimize also coastal erosion. But because of intense agricultural activities that have degraded the coastal waters due to phosphorus and nitrogen fertilizer runoffs, they've become suspended particles in the coastal waters, causing algae blooms, eutrophication, and clouding the clarity of the water. Therefore, majority of the coastal waters of Denmark suffers from poor overall ecological conditions with many marine dead zones. But not only are the marine realm physically invisible due to the murky waters, It's also psychologically invisible to us as we hardly receive any training as landscape architects, urban planners, and designers to consider the well-being of the sea or the perspective of marine life forms in our urban development plans. Moreover, seaweed is considered a nuisance, a weed, something ugly, smelly, and unknown. Next, I present the four main propositions of urban seascaping as a response, a way to acknowledge marine life's right to cohabit coastal areas and as a design client for coastal cities to coexist better with them. So the first proposition of urban seascaping is to depart from the approach that coastal cities are not only for human residents, but it's non-human residents as well, in particular those that live under the water. This means acknowledging a multi-species future where we provide spaces and strategies that enhance the meeting place between human and non-human, that can also act as a form of commons for all, and not just for the wealthy few that can afford the sea view apartments. It should belong and be accessible to all while providing a buffer zone for protection and adaptation from future issues with water. Therefore, waterfront spaces in coastal cities hold the potential for not only thinking about protection, but also a way to re-envision the way we relate and live with the sea. The second proposition is to make the invisible visible as a response to the current invisibility of marine life, both physically and psychologically. Therefore, it's really important that what we do in these urban coastal areas are coupled with other transdisciplinary collaborations, such as educational and cultural initiatives like sea gardens that enhance ocean literacy by involving the public and help making these invisible marine life more visible, tactile, and engaging to the people. And coupled with marine restoration efforts to revert the current poor conditions of coastal waters in Denmark and many other places, it can result in better clarity of the waters, meaning that we are able to literally see these marine nature that provides a host of important function for coastal cities. Third proposition is to depart from the notion of an edge to a zone for marine nature-based solution, but a much bigger zone that goes all the way upstream and further out into the sea. This is because certain types of seaweed that has the wave attenuating properties, such as kelp, only grow in deeper, colder, and saltier conditions of the sea. So for coastal cities expecting a much more violent wave action, seaweed forests can act as the first line of defense by reducing the strength of storm surges before it reaches the city. Furthermore, in order to garner significant impact from marine nature-based solutions, it would require much larger scale of intervention, up to, at times, several hundred square meters, crossing man-made boundaries, which would require more intermunicipal collaboration. The last proposition is called invite the agency of the sea. Rather than constantly blocking out and managing the sea, how about if we invite it back into our cities and allow the water and nature to be a design agent? For instance, this is a winning proposal from a competition called Canton, which explored a long-term approach where the edge would slowly grow with time to accommodate more water while creating a meeting space between the city, its residents, with the sea that brings seaweed, eelgrass, fish, and mussels into this new meeting space. The proposal provides different platforms, walkways, steps for better engagement with the water, while these features also act as coastal protection in the form of step dikes that starts with the water as stone reefs, then it gradually gets higher along with the transition between seascaping to landscaping. So that has been the four main propositions of urban seascaping. Thank you so much for listening.